Also joining us on the show is Ambassador Arun Singh. Ambassador Singh, what do you make of the video conference today of the regional leaders for a quicker response to COVID-19 and the fact that the Prime Minister, of course, offered both help in terms of monetary help and, of course, common pool of medicines and doctors, a rapid action force, in a sense, to the rest of the region?
This initiative, I think, was important on several counts. First, SAARC itself has not really been functioning now for some time. The last SAARC summit, as was mentioned by one of the participants, was held way back in 2014. But at the same time, certain things you cannot ignore. Geography and health and pandemics, environmental issues are one of them. So this was a recognition that this is an area where SAARC would have relevance, and maybe we can look at bringing a SAARC-based cooperation mechanism on this. And perhaps if it is one way of getting SAARC back into action, because SAARC, again, is among the regions that is not very well integrated, and most countries could benefit from that. So that is one. Second, in terms of the response to COVID-19, what a lot of people have criticized is, one, initially there was lack of information. The countries where it was rampant, countries where it originated, hid the information related to the disease, it spread, and that enabled it to spread more. So whatever can be done to make it a more transparent process will benefit everyone. So that was the second message. The third thing that has happened is, unfortunately, because of the way the US has been looking at its engagement around the world, focusing more on America first sort of approach, that there's not been really a coordinated global effort to deal with the challenge of COVID-19. It is essentially every country for itself. US, for example, just stopped people coming from Europe, and the Europeans were very surprised that it was done in a unilateral fashion. So again, a signal that despite whatever may be the global trends, a recognition that cooperation, interregional, international cooperation to deal with this, to cooperate to deal with the consequences, to share information is an important dimension. And the fourth thing that struck me was that large number of participants pointed out that it's not just dealing with the immediate challenge and dealing with the disease, but you also have to look at the long-term consequences. There will be economic impact on all the countries. For example, Maldives, 25% of its GDP comes from tourism, and that is severely impacted. Sri Lanka, a significant part of its GDP comes from tourism. And then value chains are also going to be disrupted. So there will be longer-term economic consequences for the region, for all of the countries involved, and therefore how do they come together and work together to deal with that in a sustained effort. So I think that was another very important message. So the proposals that the Indian Prime Minister made, for example, in terms of an emergency fund, in terms of a task force where people come together, share their experiences, setting up a training module, sharing the system whereby you can track people who have maybe exposed to those who have fallen sick. These would be important in dealing with the shorter term and then working together for meeting the longer term challenges emerging from this pandemic.
Right, absolutely. And the fact, would you agree then that, sharing of information, there has been in the initial few weeks some disinformation or slow form of information coming from countries worse affected. In that spirit, do you see closer cooperation between SAARC and ETSIO also helping fight this disease?
Well, as you have seen, initially when the disease broke out in China, for a long time, the Chinese authorities tried to suppress information related to that disease. And therefore, it spread in Wuhan and other parts of China very rapidly. And then from there, it spread elsewhere. For example, the disease initially came to India through Italy. And it came to Italy because of its very close links with China. And large number of people from Wuhan are apparently working in projects in Italy. So it has been that kind of link and lack of information that led to the spread of this disease. So I think this bit about sharing information about how they are dealing with the challenge, what measures are successful, what is not successful, all that will certainly help in addressing and mitigating the consequences.
Right. And what did you think then, of course, all the leaders of the SAARC nations were present at this video conference, except for Imran Khan, and there were hints from the health advisor to the Prime Minister of Pakistan that we should, have a health ministerial meeting of the SAARC which Pakistan can host, and China can be a part of that as well. What did you make of some of the comments that came from the Pakistani side?
Well, that's the usual politics from Pakistan playing out. As you saw, that they did not let go of even this opportunity of dealing with a serious pandemic to come out with their political position related to Jammu and Kashmir. So they felt they needed to articulate that. And I think they are under their own compulsions. They may have felt that if they don't do it, they will come under criticism within Pakistan. So they were covering that. And I think, again, Imran Khan didn't participate himself personally, despite the importance of the crisis everyone is facing, and all other leaders were present, because he didn't want to interact in this format when they have certain political positions and difficulties related to India. So that was really a political posturing by them. And then, of course, now they want to take the initiative and hold the meeting of the health ministers. And that's for people to take a technical call on whether that should be looked at or whether you just continue with the video conference format. Because many proposals came forward that you can set up a task force, a group of experts who could meet regularly or through video conferencing. And I recall that the Indian Prime Minister also said that a week from now, designated experts would again do a video conference to assess whether they have to take it forward. So Pakistan again wants to inject clearly its role. And then in various SAARC events, Pakistan has always tried to somehow bring in China, because it feels that if you bring in China, then it tries to deal with in some way the imbalance it has in terms of size, strength and power compared to India. So that's a game they played all the time. And again, I think it's for that very reason that they may have suggested that they should also bring in the Chinese health minister. So that's the usual Pakistani game playing out. And I think one has to just ignore what they are doing, continue with the purpose for which the meeting was called, and try and take specific concrete steps in partnership with others.
Absolutely. And going back to the point that the Bhutanese leader made about, the disproportionate harm to the economies that will take place in the developing world, the fact that coronavirus and its spread over the next few months and how it pans out will impact disproportionately the smaller economies. And that is something that time again was referred to in the SAARC meeting today, and that there needs to be a long-term strategy to tackle that.
Absolutely, and the smaller countries will be impacted more because they don't have the resources to deal with mitigation. And so people would have to look at not just regional cooperation mechanisms, but even international. There may need to be a window, for example, in the World Bank or IMF to look at support to developing countries who have been impacted by this disease. Or even major donors may have to step up their bilateral funding mechanisms. But we'll have to see how the global economy evolves, because major economies are being impacted. China is going to be impacted. The United States is going to be impacted in a big way. Stock markets have come down all over the world. Europe is facing a major crisis because, as many of the participants today pointed out, that after China, Europe has emerged as a major hub. And for many of the countries, Maldives, Sri Lanka, it is tourist arrivals from Europe. And the decline in that arrival has become a problem. So I think even the major donors are going to face their own challenge. So all the countries in the world will need to come together and try and drive a strategy so that everyone is able really to pull themselves up with their bootstraps. But the developing countries and the smaller countries receive special attention.
Right, absolutely. Ambassador Arun Singh, thanks very much indeed for joining us and sharing your thoughts on